So, as an enthusiast of arms and armor, and someone who's also studied early American history in a formal way, when it comes to fighting axes, this is the one that I'm most familiar with. This, of course, is the North American tomahawk. Now, as you guys know, there have been many different types of battle axes and fighting axes throughout the centuries, and they're all different types from different geographical regions. So today, we are going to take a look at... We're going to take a look at a different type that I've just acquired. This is the Condor Valhalla battle axe. So let's do a review of this and check it out. Okay, my friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike, and as you guys know, I do swords on this channel predominantly, but I do have something different today to take a look at, and it's this guy right here. This is the Valhalla battle axe by Condor Knife and Tool. So I picked this up from Cult of Athena, and of course I will put a link down in the description below as to where you can find it and the different specs and information that Cult of Athena offers. However, you can get this in other places. I just use Cult of Athena as a reference because a lot of people know that website and are familiar with it, and they are generally pretty good, and it is where I got mine. Now, this is a fighting axe, and we're going to talk a little bit about the differentiation between a fighting axe and a tool axe in a second, but let's go ahead and just briefly look at some of the specs of this thing, and then we'll get into the talking about it and reviewing it. So what we have here is a long 30-inch hickory haft that has been adorned with cool Viking-esque carvings. And you can see here down on the handle, I really like this design here. This has been carved in slightly, and then it looks like they kind of did some burning on it to kind of accentuate the design, and it's mirrored on the other side. And as you go up towards the upper portion of the haft, you can see they carved in some really nice Viking runes. You know, this is actually greatly appreciated because it just adds a little bit to what would otherwise be a fairly boring, just standard hickory haft, but that would have been fine too. These extra design features are actually nicely done, and I really like them. Now, the head is a bearded shape. This is basically what they call a bearded design. These were quite common throughout the medieval period and the early medieval period in terms of fighting axes. And yeah, it's not a very heavy weapon. I actually weighed this whole thing. It weighs about 850 grams. So really not all that heavy when it comes to an axe. And we're gonna get into talking about some things, some properties of axes in a second. But yeah, if you take a look at the head, it is not particularly thick when it comes to axes, because once again this was designed as a fighting axe, and as you can see, it has that sort of teardrop shape, which helps a lot with indexing. Now, what I can say is that this is extremely comfortable to use, and I really like swinging it around. It's great for a two-handed maneuvering, because it has such a long shaft. I mean, you can use it with one hand, especially if you choke up. It's fine. If you want to choke all the way down, you have a lot of extra reach. But I think it's primarily meant to be used with two hands. Although, if you did have a shield, you could also use it with one hand, no problem. Now, I said that this is a fighting axe. Now, what differentiates a fighting axe from sort of a tool axe? Well, I happen to have here on hand the CRKT Burler, which is a bushcrafting woodworking tool axe. And if you can take a look at this thing right now, you can see quite a difference both in axe head design as well as length. What we have here is a 30-inch shaft. This is about a 15.5-inch. So you got more than double, or I should say double the length here than you do here. Now, this is made for reach. Once again, this is made for striking people in combat. You want to keep your opponent far away. You want to be able to hit your opponent before they can hit you. You need that extra length. This is a woodworking tool, so you can see that the haft design and length is much different, but where there's a lot of difference is in the head design. Now look how compact that woodworking head is compared to this one here. And you have a lot more edge length here, which helps you for actually cutting softer targets, whereas this is a lot more compressed, made for chopping and hacking into wood. But take a look at this profile right here. Quite a difference, right? The woodworking axe is much wider, it's much thicker, and has a much better profile for splitting and hacking into wood, whereas we've sacrificed all of that weight and heft over here for agility in combat. And especially around the eye, I mean, these have two different types of eye construction, or up here is how they're mounted, but as you can see, there is a lot more mass on the woodworking axe behind the blade than there is on this here. So this is meant to be much more agile and nimble when fighting. Also, this is made for striking softer targets than that. This is made for striking people who are wearing clothing or armor or mail and stuff like that. So you don't really need the heft and the width there for splitting wood, because this is not really a wood splitting axe. This is made for combat. Now you'll see in some test cutting footage that I do actually chop some wood with this, and it doesn't really do all that well, but you can see that it can kind of double as a wood chopping axe in a pinch if you need it, but this is primarily made for combat. Okay, using an axe like this and having one and getting a chance to swing it around and use it has given me a greater appreciation for what you can do with an axe. And the different features of this allow you to have a greater versatility with intricate combat techniques that you can't do with something like this. This is kind of limited. And the difference there is, of course, you have a much greater difference in shaft length, but also take a look at those cutting surfaces, or the edges. This is much shorter and compressed, made for chopping and hacking. This you can also chop and hack with, but this has what is known as a bearded shape. This elongated edge here allows you to do different things. And one of the things that it really allows you to do is cut. All right, you can't cut with a tomahawk or an axe that has an edge like that. It's just not long enough. This allows you that if you get close into your opponent, and you know, the reach of this haft really isn't useful, but if you get close in, this long edge allows you to do sweeping and drawing cuts on your opponent very closely. And take a look at that. That's very long. Also, there's a lot of hooking things that you can do with this blade, hooking techniques. You can hook someone's weapon out of the way and come back with a thrust to the face with this point right here. Now, some battle axes have a much more elongated point here, kind of like have this type of profile only up here as well, which allows you to do that thrusting. However, you could do it with this particular axe. A thrust to the face with this would not be very enjoyable for your opponent. So, you know, this allows you a lot of options, and I didn't really appreciate that until I started actually handling one of these and using it. Now, this is a Viking-esque type of battle axe. However, this would be a very common item on the medieval battlefield and throughout the medieval period, and even into the colonial periods and stuff, axes like this did appear. Now, the other thing I want to mention is the length of this haft also gives it a lot of versatility and how you can move it around. So if you grip closely to the end here, you can feel a lot of the center, you can feel a lot of the mass up here to get very powerful strikes with a lot of reach. However, if you choke up here, you get a lot more control. So if you get close, you can do those cuts very effectively. So moving your hand up and down the haft allows you to be a little bit more versatile with this thing. So yeah, this has really taught me a lot, and I really am enjoying moving this thing around and learning how to use a battle axe. To note about these types of axes is, yes, you can also double, this also doubles as a tool. However, when you take a look at this blade, it's not particularly thick. I mean, this one is a little bit thicker than some that I've seen, but it has this long, sweeping bearded shape, and there's not a lot of mass around the eye here. So take a look at this here. There's not a lot of mass here. So axes that are predominantly used as tools for splitting wood and whatnot have a much more mass right here. So this is been designed to be more of a weapon than it is a tool. Of course, you can cut wood with this, and it actually does quite well, and we'll take a look at that. Check that out, guys. I did 2 cuts. Woo! Okay, so let's take a look at what it did to this really thick newspaper roll. First cut I did was that one right there. As you can see, that's a pretty devastating cut. Second one was this one right here. Went through almost all the way. And then the last one I did was a much more narrower cut, or I should say shallower cut, and it cut right down here. So pretty devastating cutting that you can do with an axe. Woo! All right, let's take a look at that, guys. That is a gaping cut. Look at that. Let's try another one. Okay, this second attempt where I was actually able to throw my body weight into the cuts was actually much more successful. Look at that. Now, you're not going to get really nice clean cuts like you would get on a sword because it's not a sword. But the fact that this axe can produce devastating cuts like this actually says a lot about the different versatility that you have with a battle axe. Beautiful. Almost like a sword. Oh, that was a really nice cut. The blade just wasn't long enough to make it through. Try that cut again, as it felt good. There we go. Nice. Wavy, but to be expected. That just smashed it. Sinks pretty deep. Ah. So do I think that this battle axe is worth your money? And I'm definitely going to have to say yes, okay? This costs about $89 on Cult of Athena's website. It's quite durable. It held up just great throughout the tests. And one of the things that really just made me enjoy using this was that learning how to use a battle axe and learning how to use some of the different things or do some of the different things that you can do with this type of axe versus something like a woodworking axe, okay? You can actually cut with this thing. You can do intricate fighting techniques with this thing, and it's given me a much greater appreciation for axes, and I definitely want to take some more time and get into learning a little bit more about fighting axes of this particular nature. Now, a couple of things to note. It didn't come with a super sharp edge, okay? So I did have to do some of my own grinding to get a much finer edge to get it to cut appropriately. Now, the edge it came with was quite robust, and I think more of an edge made for wood chopping as opposed to fighting. So I went ahead and did some grinding on it. It didn't really take me that long, but just note, you know, if you do want to get some of those, you know, paper cutting sharp cuts, you're gonna have to do some of your own grinding on it because it comes with a fairly robust edge. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth it, man. For less than $100 to get this really cool Viking-esque type of fighting axe is really nice, and I'm very glad I added it to my collection because once again it just sparked some serious interest into fighting axes and just taking a look at the different ones that are out there from different time periods and geographical areas. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit shorter than some of my others because I know a lot less about fighting axes than I do swords and stuff like that. So, but thanks for coming by, guys. If you haven't already, please subscribe, please leave a like, and share this video with people who like historical arms and armor, and stay tuned for some more sword reviews and other types of historical weapon reviews. All right, guys, thanks for coming by.